I never imagined that the next time I'd see my sister would be at our mother's funeral, wearing black crocodile tears in her eyes, and shock painted across her face when she saw the man standing by my side. Her jaw tightened, her mascara smudged, and for the first time in 6 long years she didn't have a single word to say. That moment, that silence, was worth more than any revenge I could have ever planned. But let me take you back, before the heartbreak and before the betrayal. Back to when I still believed that family meant loyalty, and love meant forever. My name is Elena. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew your name and your business. My sister Rachel and I? We were opposites. She was the golden child, pretty, bold, always the center of attention. I was the quiet one, the dreamer, the girl who'd stay up sewing dresses from thrifted fabric while she was out stealing kisses under football stadium lights. I never envied her, though, not until the night she stole the one person I thought would never betray me. Damien. He was charming, successful, the kind of man who walked into a room and made it feel smaller. I thought he saw something in me no one else had, until the day he proposed and a month later slipped a ring onto my sister's finger instead. Broke me. But the story doesn't end with heartbreak. No, this isn't a tragedy, it's a transformation. Because while they toasted champagne at their lavish engagement party, I left with nothing but a broken heart and a one-way ticket out of town. And that one decision changed everything. Because 6 years later, when fate brought us all back together under the same roof, in grief, not celebration, Rachel came face to face with a version of me she never saw coming. And the man I married? Well, let's just say he wasn't the one who needed impressing anymore. Let me tell you how it all unfolded. The betrayal, the rise, the comeback, and the moment she realized I was never the one who lost. Elena and Rachel grew up in a town so small, the neighbors knew what was for dinner before you did. Their family house sat at the edge of a sleepy road lined with old oak trees and quiet stories. From the outside, they seemed like any other sisters, 2 daughters of a single mother who worked double shifts at the diner and still managed to keep their world turning. But inside that house, 2 very different worlds existed. Rachel was the fire. Loud, bold, and brilliant in the way she lit up a room or burned it down. She had a beauty queen's smile and a politician's talent for charm. From talent shows to pageants, she soaked up the applause like sunshine. Elena? She was the quiet storm. More likely to be found sketching in her bedroom or stitching old clothes into something new. She didn't need a spotlight, just fabric, thread, and a dream. Her ambition was quiet but fierce. She wanted to build a fashion empire with her own name on the tag. While Rachel chased crowds, Elena chased purpose. After high school, Elena earned a scholarship to a prestigious fashion school in the city. She left town with a suitcase full of sketches and a head full of hope. It was there, at a charity gala she attended as a volunteer seamstress, that she met Damien. Damien was polished, powerful, and captivating. A tech investor with a sharp jawline and sharper instincts. He was older, worldly, and full of charm, especially toward the soft-spoken girl who blushed every time he called her brilliant. They started dating. Slowly at first. Then deeply. Elena felt seen, chosen, loved. But back home, Rachel had her own plans. While Elena was building her future, Rachel was losing her grip on relevance. Her social media following had flatlined, and modeling gigs were drying up. When she heard about Damien, the millionaire who had fallen for her plain little sister, something in her snapped. She showed up at one of Elena's events, all smiles and compliments. She flirted with Damien behind Elena's back, playing the part of the supportive sister while twisting every word to create tension. Elena never suspected a thing. Not until she returned from a short business trip to find Rachel's picture plastered all over Instagram. Wearing her engagement ring. Rachel and Damien were engaged. And Damien? He acted like it was the most natural thing in the world. No apology. No guilt. Just a cold shrug, as if Elena had imagined everything. Their mother told her, maybe it just wasn't meant to be, sweetheart. But Elena didn't cry. Not in front of them. She packed her sketchbook, left the ring she had once worn on the kitchen table and walked away, not realizing that what she thought was the end was just the beginning. The sun was just beginning to set when Elena arrived at the estate. She stared at the grand iron gates, freshly painted and towering like something out of a fairy tale. She checked the address Rachel had sent twice. It felt too luxurious, too extravagant for a simple networking mixer, as Rachel had described it. But then again, Rachel always had a flair for exaggeration. Elena sighed, adjusted the strap of her modest purse, and stepped out of the cab. As she walked through the garden, glowing with string lights and soft jazz echoing from hidden speakers, she caught her reflection in the large glass windows. Modest dress, hair pulled back, no makeup except for a thin stroke of eyeliner. Her heels clicked uncertainly on the marble tiles as she approached the open French doors. She stepped inside. Applause rang out from the main room. Dozens of guests turned toward the grand staircase, clapping and whistling. A photographer stood ready at the base of the steps. Elena, confused, edged toward the crowd. Then she heard the voice, smooth, charismatic, unmistakably familiar. "Thank you all for coming tonight. It means the world to us." Her stomach twisted. Damien. He descended the staircase, holding hands with a woman. Crowd cheered louder. Elena stepped closer, her breath catching in her throat. The woman beside him wasn't a celebrity or a business partner or a stranger. It was Rachel. Her sister. Her arm was wrapped possessively around Damien's, her smile wide and camera-ready. A diamond the size of a tear sparkled on her left hand. Rachel waved it in the air like a trophy. "We're engaged!" she cried. "Surprise!" The room erupted in claps and gasps and joyful laughter. Champagne flowed. Confetti rained from above. And Elena stood frozen in place, unable to breathe. Her ears buzzed. The sound of people laughing and toasting turned to static. Her vision blurred. The walls seemed to close in around her. She felt like a ghost at her own funeral. Her sister's eyes finally found hers across the room just for a second. Rachel didn't flinch. She smiled. A slow, deliberate, wicked smile. "Elena!" Their mother's voice broke through the haze. She was suddenly at her side, clutching her hand. "You made it. Isn't it beautiful?" Elena blinked rapidly. "What is this?" "A surprise engagement," her mother said softly. They didn't want to say anything until it was official. "Official?" Elena's voice cracked. "She's engaged to Damien." Her mother looked away, guilt flickering behind her eyes. "I know this is hard. But maybe this was meant to be." Elena stepped back, as if the words were physical blows. Meant to be? Was it meant to be that her sister stole the man who once promised her forever? Was it meant to be that she had to find out like this? Across the room, Damien was shaking hands, laughing with guests, his arms still around Rachel. Not once did he look toward Elena. Not once did he offer explanation or regret. And that was the moment it truly hit her. He didn't just betray her. He erased her. Tears threatened, but Elena swallowed them down. She would not cry here, not in front of them, not in front of Rachel's flashing cameras and Damien's soulless smile. She excused herself, heels clicking like gunshots across the marble as she made her way to the coat check. She didn't say goodbye. Not to Rachel. Not to Damien. Not even to her mother. Sighed, the night air hit her like a slap, cool, sharp, real. She stood there, coat in her arms, watching couples twirl under fairy lights and listening to laughter spill out the open windows. She wanted to scream. To smash something. To rewind time and burn the invitation. But instead she stood still. And in that stillness, something inside her hardened. Not in anger. Not yet. In resolve. As she got into the taxi and gave her address, Elena took one last look at the estate, the laughter, the lights, the lies, and whispered to herself, "They think this is the end of my story." But deep down, in the space where her heart had just cracked open, a quiet voice replied, It's only the beginning. The days after the engagement party blurred into one another like raindrops on glass, indistinct, cold, and heavy. Elena didn't answer her phone. She left messages unread, ignored knocks at her apartment door. She called in sick to work, then simply stopped calling. Her world had shrunk to the four corners of her bedroom, a space once filled with dreams and sketches, now dimly lit by sorrow. The engagement photos went viral. Course they did. Rachel knew how to work the camera, her hand perfectly posed on Damien's chest, the diamond front and center. Headlines read like knives. Socialite beauty and tech tycoon tie the knot, sister love? Elena stared at the screen for hours. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just numbness. Like her soul had slipped out of her body and left her behind. One night, she pulled out an old box of childhood photos. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through them. Two little girls in overalls, barefoot by the creek. Rachel smiling wide, Elena shy beside her. A birthday party, Elena holding up a hand-sewn doll. Rachel pouting in the background. She froze. Even then, Rachel's envy had lingered beneath the surface. Elena remembered that day. She had made that doll herself, hours spent stitching after school. Their mother had praised her with tearful pride. Rachel had thrown hers in the bin minutes later. It wasn't Damien she wanted. It was always about taking what Elena built with love. The next morning, Elena opened the window. Sunlight spilled in like a silent promise. She packed her bags slowly, methodically, not with defeat but with determination. She didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to explain. Within a week, she'd moved to a new city. No friends. No comfort zone. No plan. But something inside her had shifted, something she didn't know she possessed. Grit. She worked odd jobs. Waitress double shifts. Took sewing gigs on Craigslist. Her fingers bled more than once. Her eyes stung from sleepless nights. But with every stitch, she was mending more than fabric. She was stitching herself back together. She stopped checking social media. She stopped wondering if they missed her. Instead, she began sketching again, not for a client, not for praise, but for herself. And in the quiet of her tiny apartment, among spools of thread and scattered sketches, Elena whispered the words that would shape everything to come. Let them keep the past. I'm designing my future. It had been almost 2 years since Elena vanished from her old life, and in that time she'd become something entirely new, not a different person but a truer version of herself. She still lived modestly, still worked late into the night, but her sketches had grown bolder. Her designs carried weight. Soul. Story. She never expected to be noticed. But one rainy Thursday afternoon, seated in the back row of a design mentorship conference, damp notebook in hand, hair frizzed from the weather, she caught someone's attention. Not just anyone. Jonah Pierce. Founder of Pierce Atelier, one of the most forward-thinking design houses on the East Coast. Known for rejecting the glitz of the fashion elite and favoring authenticity, innovation, and people with heart. She hadn't even realized he was in the room until the final panel ended and he approached her during the break. I saw your sketches, he said gently, holding up the notebook she had accidentally dropped. You've got something rare, clarity. Elena blinked, unsure if it was a compliment or a test. He smiled. And soul. That's harder to teach. A week later, she walked into his studio, small, minimalist, filled with light and raw fabric, and accepted his offer. Not a full-time job. Not yet. Just a freelance contract. But for Elena, it was a door she thought had closed forever. They worked together quietly at first. Late nights turning sketches into samples. Jonah never hovered, never dictated. He asked questions. He listened. He respected her space. Her pace. And somewhere between design meetings and tea breaks, glances became conversations. Conversations became laughter. Laughter became warmth. Jonah was nothing like Damien. He didn't charm rooms, he listened in corners. He didn't flaunt his success, he let his work speak. He noticed small things, when she needed a break, when her stitching hand was sore, when her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It wasn't fireworks. It was sunrise. Slow, gentle, certain. And for the first time in years, Elena allowed herself to hope. Not for a perfect romance, but for something real. Rachel had always dreamed of marrying into luxury, of penthouse views, designer wardrobes, and champagne at breakfast. And for a while she had it all. The wedding made headlines. Custom gown flown in from Milan. A ceremony beneath crystal chandeliers. Her vows memorized, Damien's whispered like business terms, polished, rehearsed, empty. Till she smiled for the cameras. She always had. But behind the glass walls of their sleek Manhattan condo, the cracks began to show, not in the marble floors or the gold fixtures, but in Damien. He grew colder with each passing week. He worked long hours, spoke in clipped sentences, and scrolled through his phone at dinner. When Rachel reached for him, he pulled away. When she made a joke, he didn't laugh, only looked at her like she was speaking a language he no longer understood. One night, dressed in silk and perfume, she entered his study with a tray of wine and 2 glasses. "You never drink with me anymore," she said with a teasing pout. Damien didn't even glance up from his screen. "I outgrew games, Rachel." She blinked. "It's just wine." "No, it's a performance." His eyes finally met hers, sharp and unreadable. "Everything with you is." She tried to smile, but it cracked. "Isn't that what you wanted?" "I wanted substance," he replied coldly. "Like your sister had." The words hit her like ice water. Her smile vanished. "Elena." Damien stood, adjusted his cufflinks. "Say what you want about her, but at least she had vision. Passion. You're just decoration." Rachel stood frozen in place, the wine untouched, her hands trembling. That night, for the first time in her life, she looked into the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. All the glamour, all the filters, the curated perfection, it couldn't hide the hollowness blooming in her chest. She had won. The man. The wedding. The spotlight. But somehow she still felt like the loser. 'Cause maybe, just maybe, Damien never loved her at all. He only wanted the illusion. And now, trapped inside a designer cage, Rachel finally wondered what it was like to be chosen not for a face, but for a soul. The first time Elena saw her name stitched into a label, she cried. It was just a sample, a soft ivory blazer, sharp-collared and hand-lined in silk. But it was hers. Designed from memory, sewn from late nights and quiet tears. And under Jonah's careful mentorship, her sketches had transformed into a collection, not flashy, not loud, but powerful in its simplicity. He believed in her long before the world did. They launched Elena M quietly. Pop-up showroom. A small website. Word of mouth. She didn't expect noise, just a chance to speak through her art. But then the right person wore the right piece at the right time. An up-and-coming actress, known for her indie roles and unapologetic style, wore Elena's midnight blue coat on the red carpet. One photo. One moment. And the internet exploded. Who is Elena M? Where can I buy this? Fresh, fierce, feminine. Within 48 hours, her website crashed from traffic. Vogue ran a feature. The coat was declared the silhouette of the season. Elena was invited to sit on panels, interviewed on podcasts, quoted in fashion columns that once ignored her emails. Jonah watched it all unfold from the wings, quiet and proud. You're not just rising, he told her one night as they folded new fabric samples side by side. You're becoming. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Rachel sat in a sterile white spa lounge, scrolling idly through her phone while a technician filed her nails. Her fingers stopped mid-scroll. There she was. Elena. Smiling. Confident. draped in her own design, standing beside the actress with flashbulbs going off. Front page of Style and Influence magazine. Rachel's face twisted. "Elena," she whispered aloud, almost disbelieving. She flipped to the article. Read every glowing word. Every quote about vision and resilience. Every mention of Jonah Pierce as her business partner and husband. The air left Rachel's lungs. All this time she had believed she'd won. Taken the man, the spotlight, the crown. But here was Elena, not broken, not forgotten, but elevated. While Rachel faded into irrelevance, Elena was becoming a name. And worse, she was becoming unforgettable. The silence in the penthouse was deafening. Rachel stared at the thick envelope Damien had tossed on the marble counter like a receipt. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the papers. Divorce. No conversation. No warning. Just his signature in ink and a note scribbled at the bottom. "My lawyers will be in touch. Don't make this messy." "Damien," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "You can't be serious." He didn't even glance up from his espresso. "You wanted the life. You got it. Now it's over. But I gave up everything for this." "No," he cut in, cold as steel. "You gave up nothing. You were just a placeholder." Those words shattered whatever pride she had left. The next weeks passed like a slow-motion nightmare. The lawyers were ruthless. Prenup ironclad. No alimony. No assets. Not even the penthouse. By the time the movers came, Rachel stood barefoot in the foyer, surrounded by half-packed boxes and fading orchids. Not one friend returned her calls. Tabloids stopped caring. Rachel's driver didn't show up that day. Her car had already been repossessed. And so, suitcase in hand, heels scuffed and soul hollow, she boarded a one-way train back to her dusty hometown, the same town she once swore she'd never return to. Across the ocean, Paris shimmered under golden twilight. On a quiet rooftop garden tucked above the Seine, Elena stood barefoot in a flowing ivory dress, laughing breathlessly as Jonah held her hand, his other holding a small velvet box. "I don't have fireworks," he said softly, "or paparazzi or gold-plated promises." Elena's eyes welled. "But I have truth. And time. And the kind of love that waits for no audience." He knelt, the Eiffel Tower glowing behind him, lights reflecting in her tears. "Elena, will you build the rest of your life with me?" She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her arms wrapped around his neck, and she whispered yes into his skin as the city sparkled below. Half a world apart, one sister found her future in a rooftop kiss. The other, in silence and shadows, realized she had none. The sky was the color of ash the day they buried their mother. Rain clung to the air, not falling, just threatening like the tension in the old church. The bell tolled once, echoing through the pews as friends and neighbors trickled in, murmuring condolences and adjusting dark umbrellas. Rachel stood near the front, draped in designer black, though the hem of her coat was fraying. She hadn't seen her mother in months. She hadn't even known she was sick. Call came too late, just another door slammed shut. Now she stood beside a casket, surrounded by people who whispered more than they spoke. Then came the hush. Not from the priest. Not from the organ. From the doors swinging open. Elena entered the church, hand in hand with Jonah. She wore a simple black dress, hair pulled back, no jewelry except a silver band glinting on her ring finger. Jonah was tall beside her, his hand protective at the small of her back. His presence wasn't flashy, but commanding. Grounded. Rachel turned. The world tilted. Her breath caught in her throat as her eyes landed on him, Jonah Pierce. She knew that face. Had followed his work. Had envied the brand his company built. But never, not once, had she imagined he would be the man standing beside her sister. Elena's gaze met hers. No malice. No smugness. Just quiet power. A woman no longer defined by what was taken from her, but by what she had built. They walked down the aisle together, silent, graceful. And in that moment, Rachel saw it all. Why Damien had never looked at her the way Jonah looked at Elena. Why Elena's name was on every fashion blog while hers was lost in forgotten hashtags. Why, despite everything she had stolen, it had never really been hers. At the altar, Elena placed a white rose on their mother's casket. Her hand lingered a moment longer than necessary, lips pressed tight against emotion. Behind her, Jonah reached for her hand again. And Rachel, surrounded by sympathy cards and strangers, realized for the first time in her life. She was truly alone. The funeral had ended. The guests had gone. The rain at last had come. It drizzled softly over the cemetery, soaking the earth where fresh flowers wilted in silence. Elena stood beneath the church awning, arm looped through Jonah's as he quietly shielded her with his coat. Rachel watched from a distance, fingers clenched around a damp umbrella, chest heavy with unspoken words. Her heels sank into the mud as she approached, slow, uncertain, pride unraveling with every step. "Elena," she said, her voice tight. "Can we talk?" Jonah looked to Elena, concerned. She nodded gently. He stepped back, offering her space, but not before kissing her forehead, lingering there for a breath too long. Rachel flinched at the tenderness of it. She waited until Jonah disappeared into the car before speaking. "You married him," Rachel said, eyes narrowing. "Jonah Pierce. Was that your revenge?" Elena turned slowly, eyes steady and unreadable. "No," she replied simply. "It was love." Rachel laughed once, bitter, disbelieving. "Come on. After what I did. You expect me to believe this isn't some elaborate payback?" Elena's gaze didn't waver. "I don't need revenge, Rachel. Life handled that for me." The rain picked up, pattering softly between them. A silence settled, not awkward but heavy, honest. Rachel looked away, throat tightening. "He never loved me, you know." "Damien." "Not really. I think I knew it the whole time." "I know," Elena said softly. Rachel met her sister's eyes, for the first time in years, without pretense. "You're happy." Elena didn't answer with words. Jonah stepped out of the car just then, umbrella in one hand, reaching instinctively for her with the other. When their eyes met, his whole expression shifted, as if the rest of the world dimmed and only she existed. Rachel saw it. Not lust. Not status. Love. Pure and grounded and real. And it broke her. 'Cause Damien had never looked at her that way. No one ever had. Rachel nodded slowly. "I guess you win." But Elena smiled, not triumphant, just calm. "There was never a game." She turned, walked toward Jonah, took his hand. And without another glance, they disappeared into the mist. Rachel stood in the rain, alone, not just without shelter, but without illusion. They say betrayal changes a person, that it hardens the heart, sharpens the mind, turns innocence into armor. And maybe for a time that was true for me. But what I learned is this: you don't have to burn others to rise. Sometimes you simply have to step away and let your light grow brighter. Rachel betrayed me, yes. She took what wasn't hers, thinking it would give her the life she always dreamed of. But love that's stolen never stays. And dreams built on envy always collapse. For a long time I thought I needed to fight back. To prove I was stronger, more beautiful, more successful. But life taught me something gentler and far more powerful. Reinvention doesn't come from revenge. Comes from reclaiming who you were before the pain. And building something real from the ashes. I found love again, not the kind that sweeps you off your feet, but the kind that holds your hand while you rebuild your wings. Jonah never tried to fix me. He simply stood beside me while I healed myself. And Rachel? She's not destroyed. Just quieter now. Humbled. Not by me, by the consequences of her own choices. I didn't win. There was no game. I simply lived. Chose grace. Chose growth. And maybe, in the end, that's what real victory looks like. As Jonah and I walk forward, hand in hand, hearts steady, I no longer look back. Because the truth is, the life I have now isn't a reward. It's a reflection of who I chose to become.